When you get to animals that lived around 200 million years ago, more recent in the fossil record, you find that they have formed a completely new jaw joint. That's because the bone that holds the teeth had grown so large it made contact with the skull. So over millions of years, bones that formed the old jaw joint began to shrink and eventually became redundant. But instead of being lost altogether, these old jaw bones were repurposed to take up a new role in the ear. Finding out when that transition took place is difficult because the tiny ear bones sit loose in the skull and they are rarely found with the rest of the body. But recently, a fascinating discovery was made in another part of the world. China. One of the leading scientists involved in the study is my colleague, Zexi Lo, who works in a lab next door to mine.
So Lo is a fabulous anatomist. Here's a guy who knows the anatomy of the teeth, the anatomy of the jaws, the anatomy of the ears, of reptiles and mammals as well as anybody on the planet. Furthermore, he's able to work with really tiny specimens.
When the fossil was first spotted in the field, my friend thought it's just a pebble. He picked it up and he realized there were bones in that pebble. It's a fossil. After more detailed work, we know that it's actually a mammal skull, and it's related to the origin of all mammals.
They named it Hadrocodium. Using a 3D printer, Lo built an enlarged replica of its tiny skull. The teeth had cusps like other mammals, but it's the lower jaw that really stood out. The jaw joint looked remarkably like that of modern mammals, which suggests that the old reptilian jaw bones were no longer being used to eat with. They had become part of the ear.
On the inside of the jaw, there are structures to hold the ear bone. This shows us Hadrocodium's ear bones are still attached to the jaw.
But the attachment was minimal. Hadrocodium's ear bones were on their way to being completely separate. So this 195-million-year-old creature, no bigger than a paperclip, had taken a big step towards the kind of hearing we have today. Along with its specialized teeth and fur coat, Hadrocodium is regarded as one of the earliest mammals. And there was a final surprise. Another important mammalian feature inside its skull.
We originally thought the early mammals' brain were a lot smaller, but Hadrocodium really surprised us. It has a huge brain. In fact, its brain is 50% bigger relative to its body mass than anything before it. That's why we call the fossil Hadrocodium. It means it got a great big brain.
The question is, why would our ancestors have needed such a big brain in the first place? After all, they weren't building cities or writing Shakespeare. 195 million years ago, a big brain helped them to survive in a dangerous nighttime world. The rise of a new kind of reptile, the dinosaurs, forced the early mammals to become tiny creatures of the night. From smelling to hearing to touching with their whiskers, processing so much sensory information caused their brains to grow. They hunted in the dark and hid in their burrows during the day. Many of them maintained that lifestyle for over 130 million years. Only when the dinosaurs were wiped out in yet another mass extinction 65 million years ago could the mammals truly emerge and flourish.
So when the dinosaurs disappeared, that's when mammals really took off in a big way.
That's right. They took the opportunity of all the vacant niches, the empty spaces on the land surface, and they stepped out from under the dinosaurs' footprints and radiated and diversified.
So in a very real sense, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the removal or death of the dinosaurs, right?
Certainly.
Our earliest mammalian ancestors were tiny, but deep within their bodies, just as in ours, is an incredible history.
The more you look at fossils, the more you look at embryos, the more you see that we're repurposed reptiles. The jaw I'm using to talk with, the teeth I used to eat with, the ear bones I used to hear with, the skin and the structures that appear within it that arose in our reptile past. So in a very real sense, every day we feel the consequences of our inner reptile.